Oikos presents 15 Seconds of Strength.
Here we go. Steve's got a trunk full of groceries and no one to help him.
Oh, that's tough, Jim. Looks like a 5-trip load at least.
He grabs the first bag, the second. Bob, it looks like he's trying to do it all in one trip. He shimmies the door open, steps over the dog, and he stumbles.
Oh, right into the kitchen without missing a beat. Jim, now that's a man who eats his protein-packed Oikos.
With 15 grams of complete protein in each cup, Oikos Triple Zero can help build strength for every day. Oikos, stronger makes everything better.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, April the 16th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I want to send along a good luck and safe travels to the members of the Southern Shore Breakers Senior Hockey Club heading out to Dundas, Ontario to participate in the 2024 Allen Cup. The Allen Cup has been played since 1908. It's the oldest championship, ice hockey championship in the country. So good luck to the Breakers as they take on the host, Dundas Real McCoys. There's another team from Ontario and one from Alberta, which I think is Tony playing. Anyway, go get them. That tournament begins on the 20th of the month. And for the second straight year, the Newfoundland Rogues basketball team, members of, made their way to Shetigi to take part in the basketball clinic. So they partnered up with the Shetigi Eagles, and apparently the welcome was quite warm, and they, for the second year in a row, they've had a good time. They come back to St. John's, set to have a homestand beginning on Thursday evening. And the Boston Marathon was yesterday. They've been running that race since 1897, and obviously every single year there's a huge contingent, from this province that participate in Boston. So if someone belonged to you or you yourself participated in the Boston Marathon yesterday, congratulations. No small feat to complete a marathon. And sticking with Boston for a second, it was on this date in 1910 that the doors of the Boston Arena opened up for the first time. It's the oldest existing ice hockey rink in North America, and it's now called the Matthews Arena. So, and for context, one of the oldest rinks in Canada, of course, is the St. Bon's Forum. It was initially known as the St. Bon's Rink, and that opened the doors in 1923. And I know people have a habit of looking down their nose at women's sports, but there's been a surge in popularity. Just look how well the Women's Professional Ice Hockey League has done this year, drawing some huge crowds and some pretty big barns. And then the NCAA basketball on the women's side. The numbers are undeniable. So Caitlin Clark, former Iowa Hawkeye, she was drafted first overall last night by the Indiana Fever. The draft was in Indiana at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. 17,000 people went in to watch the draft. So again, for the popularity numbers, during the March Madness, specifically the Final Four, and Clark, of course, the NCAA's all-time leading scorer, 18.9 million people tuned in to watch the national championship game. Iowa lost to unbeaten South Carolina. That's 2 years in a row that they lost to the eventual champions. This year, South Carolina. Last year, LSU. But those numbers are whopping big. Bigger on the men's side, bigger than the men's side. And tickets to go see the Final Four on the women's side, more expensive and more in demand than the men's side, which is extraordinary stuff. Anyway, let's keep going. So the House of Assembly has reopened, as we know, and this was always going to be the case, that the Justice Minister, John Hogan, was going to be taken to task about his comments saying that it's impossible for lawyers to re-traumatize survivors of sexual assault. He's previously apologized for it, said he's met with various community organizations and so-called stakeholders to learn more, to move the process forward, to maybe change the way these types of trials happen. It's always going to be an adversarial sort of relationship between the defense and the Crown. But some of the things that we've heard from some of these trials in the past are unfortunate, to say the very least. So he knows full well that his statement was not only cold, but it's demonstrably false. I mean, the issues regarding how many people are willing to come forward to help or try to navigate the criminal justice system, including the trial, has been a problem for years. So this is obviously unhelpful, I will say. So again, inevitably, there was going to be the call for his resignation. And it was shouted long and loud yesterday several times. Now, unlikely that's going to happen, or whether or not the Premier is going to remove him from the portfolio, but that was front and centre in the House of Assembly yesterday. And we'll see, based on the recommendation authored in a report regarding the MHA salaries. Yes, they've been frozen since 2009, but the recommendation of $25,000 immediate bump has to be voted on in the House of Assembly. We'll see where they go on that particular front. And yes, even if their wages had to increase based on the Consumer Price Index since 2009, they'd be in and around what they are today. Back in 2009, their salary represented about 70% of a deputy minister's. It's now closer to half of a deputy minister. What that says to me is deputy ministers are paid pretty well too. So we'll see how that particular vote goes. All right, moving on. Congratulations, Jim McKenna. And I guess to Dana Blackmore and Jim Gill, as well as they ran in the by-election at Fogo Island Cape Friels. Pretty remarkable turnaround here. So Mr. McKenna turns the district blue because it was formerly held by the late member Derek Bragg. Back in the last general election, 2021, Derek Bragg won by 20. He had 2,511 votes. Sue Collins ran for the PCs with 1,507. Jim Gill got 95. This go around, a complete flip. Mr. McKenna got 3,290 votes. Dana Blackmore got 2,244 votes. So it's 58% versus 39% for Blackmore. It's an absolute flip from what we saw in the 2021 election. And pretty solid voter turnout, given the fact it was a by-election. So congratulations to Mr. McKenna. The thoughts will be bandied about as to how and why this happened. Look, whether it be directly related with the fishery-related conversations and the standoff and the adversarial relationship, once again, between ASP and the union, and the inclusion of the government, and maybe government inaction and changing back to the old flawed price-setting process, whether it's that or the general overall tenure of the Liberals at the helm of the government, but you look back to Conception Bay, East Bell Island, the Liberals turned it from Tory to Liberal. And now out in Fogo Island, Cape Friels, the exact opposite. So it's an interesting result, and congratulations to Mr. McKenna. As to why, maybe people just thought he was the best candidate. I know Dana Blackmore was well known. Mr. McKenna has, I believe, a past relationship with ongoing concerns on Fogo Island, Change Islands, when it comes to things like the ferry committee and whatnot, the transportation committee. So if Mr. McKenna is interested in calling, we can take it on. All right, in the fishery, lobster. We can talk about the crab. Lots of people still absolutely furious about how this is all played out. But anyway, the price for lobster has now been set. It's going to fetch a minimum price of $3.25 per pound. It'll increase by 70% of any incremental amount greater than $5 and 80% of any incremental amount greater than $6. And of course, with the crab, there's going to be an independent party apparently at the end of the season to come in and evaluate what the market looked like. And both sides have agreed upon 38.5% of the market value going to the harvesters. So at some point, given the fact that it's every single year for the past 20 years or so, we've had the same old rackets, I wonder is there going to be an opportunity to hammer this out so that it makes sense, so that it's predictable going into the season. Because the market is what the market is. It's a percentage of the market value that will be the ultimate concern. And I mean, last year, $2.20, then there was an offer of $2.60 from the processors, and now landed in crab at $3 as a minimum floor price. Some harvesters are quite pleased to get back out there with this little bit of a bump. Some, not so much, if you want to take it on. We can do it. Changing gears, and this is a terrible story. I don't think we talk about it enough. We talk about all the crises, healthcare crisis, housing crisis, and they're all very real and certainly important. But in the world of opioid deaths, we haven't deemed it any sort of national crisis at this moment in time, but we absolutely should. The numbers are absolutely staggering. So this was a report published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, talking about opioid deaths doubling in Canada between 2019 and 2021. A variety of reasons why. Some of the pandemic-related measures, limited access to harm reduction policies, harm reduction services, and then the anxiety and the loneliness and what have you. And then, of course, with so many restrictions regarding importation, there was a real concentrated toxic supply, including more and more drugs being laced with fentanyl. And on that front, the criminal justice system does need to up its game when it comes to dealing in these not only illicit drugs, but deadly drugs. Fentanyl is dropping people dead where they stand. So here's some of the numbers. Some of the provinces that experienced a dramatic jump, and for some reason, this province was not included in this report, but Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, massive jumps. Overall, let's see, just give some national numbers. The annual number of opioid overdose deaths surged from 3,007 to 6,222 over a 3-year period. So that's remarkable stuff. BC, of course, is at the epicenter of the opioid crisis. Their numbers are staggering. 229 deaths per million for that age group between males in their 20s and 30s. In the course of those national numbers, 70% of those overdose deaths were males. So when we talk about anxiety, loneliness, mental health related issues, the toxic supply on the street, people will rightfully call for more harm reduction policies, more harm reduction services, and easy access. Unfortunately, and for some bizarre reason, this has become a matter of politics, not policy. As opposed to what works is what people believe works. So if you talk about safe injection sites, people think that they're a dumb idea. When what's also a dumb idea is the sharing of needles and the transmission of hepatitis and consequently landing people in the hospital. And I don't know how it became political to talk about how and why people are dying. So the conversation regarding safe supply is one of those real bad faith conversations. Safe consumption sites. Whether or not they work, whether or not people want them in their neighborhood, we can have that conversation. But we really can't allow politicians to simply shrug their shoulders and say, whatever. Over 6,200 people. We've moved now to an annual average of about 6,200 annual opioid overdose deaths. And it's impacting primarily men, and that's always been the case. I'll add into it, when we look at suicide numbers, it's predominantly men as well. So I wonder if we can ever get past the partisan politics of things related to how people die. Because that's where we are. It's not about policy, it's about politics. But those are some of the numbers and how we implement not only harm reduction, but a real, no-holds-barred information and awareness, even inside the curriculum of K-12. I know there's programs like the DARE program, and they're very helpful, but the numbers are what the numbers are. And it really, again, would be a betrayal of the country and the country's youth when we just say, well, that's it, too bad, you made your decision. Sometimes that's a bit oversimplified. It's easy to fall into the death spiral of addiction. And some of the drugs, people might be the so-called weekend warrior, and the next thing they know, they've taken, whether it be cocaine or methamphetamine or whatever the case may be, and the presence of fentanyl has just stopped their heart, bang, dead. But again, we're somehow afraid to talk about that. I don't really understand why. All right, let's keep going. So we know now that End Homelessness St. John's is going to take over operations of the Comfort Inn, the transition home. They're a good organization. They got their ear to the ground. They understand the issues, so this is probably a very good idea. And it allows for the Comfort Inn to get opened quicker to accommodate whoever's going to be residents and hopefully to staff up to offer the said wraparound services. Now, the key here is going to be what many people are pointing to. This cannot just become a shelter that has the feature of a lockable door for you to have a safe stay. It has got to be a key focus on transitioning to getting back on your feet, to getting help with your addiction, to get treatment for your mental health concerns, and hopefully getting back out on your own 2 feet into the workforce in the era of actual transitioning. So there has been people already living there. There was a tour yesterday granted. Some of the rooms have been turned into small clinics. The ballroom is going to be a health center. All good. Staffing still remains a majorly concern. They talk about an intentional phased approach to staffing. Not entirely sure what that means. They've posted some job openings, but we still need to know a few things. For starters, who would be deemed the best possible people to avail of these services? We're told that there's some 20 to 30 people, because of housing concerns and medical ailments, are now in hospital versus possibly being able to get some help in this sort of setting, which would be probably better for them and certainly better for us when we talk about how much it costs. So we know they've entered into a 3-year lease to the tune of about $7 million per year. We're really going to need to hope that between End Homelessness St. John's and whatever staffing they're able to bring on site really does have the key feature of transitioning, not just sheltering. Yes, shelter is important, and yes, housing is a human right. But this has got to be something different than we've done in the past. Because, yes, many of these shelters do indeed have programs and supports in place, like the gathering place. But this has a different feel. Not to say it's a good thing or a bad thing. We can only hope it's a good thing. And you know, what would be, in addition to healthcare services and addiction treatments and mental health treatments, what about things like access to your GED? Like we yesterday talked about the Discovery Centre offering programs to allow you to finish high school and to try to deal with some of the anxiety associated with it. Will there be an on-site presence for people to be part of the Employment Stability Program? I know there's some listeners get frustrated when I deem it a success, but in measure, it is. So what that has meant is that 170 people signed up for that pilot program, which was only in St. John's, is going to be expanded province-wide. And after 11 months, 40 of those 170 no longer needed income support. I think that's some measure of success. And can we do better? Hopefully. I think people overestimate the numbers of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians on income support. It's in and around 27,000 people, about 5% of the population. So again, sometimes we exaggerate it, and we have to make sure people who are availing of social services and income support actually need it as opposed to choose it. So, and that might sound harsh to some, but I think that's the reality we should be talking about, which all has relationships back to education. So inside the Employment Stability Program, participants begin a new job or continue working will get a government payment of $250 after 6 months, $500 after a year, $1,000 after 2 years. An absolute drop in the bucket when we talk about the cost of an annual income support program, which doesn't work anyway. Then there's a new earnings exemption formula, of which we're having a devil of a time coming up with specifics. They're also upping the job start allowance from $125 to $250. So whether that means you need some new clothes to start your new job or steel-toe boots or whatever the case may be, I wonder will those two things be offered in addition to the health-related concerns and supports at that particular facility. Anyway, let's keep going. Today is budget day. And a quick reminder, your taxes have to be done in 2 weeks, so the 30th of this month. And just quickly on the carbon tax. I know people get frustrated listening to the same old stuff, but it's remarkable how many people talk about the carbon tax so much, but really don't necessarily know how it works. And this is not to say it's good or bad, but this is the facts. If you didn't do your tax by the 15th of March, you didn't get the rebate yesterday, or you weren't supposed to. And when your taxes are filed, you're going to have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get your rebate. But then I hear people going on about things like it's tested against your income. It's not. It has no bearing on your income. And then that it's taxable income. It's not. It's a tax-free benefit. So just keep that in mind as your concerns with the carbon tax rollout. Okay, so generally speaking, we'd find out about all the new spending on budget day itself. That has not been the case. They've been on a countrywide tour, whether it be Housing Minister Sean Fraser, the Prime Minister, or Minister Freeland. They've announced some $38 billion in new financial commitments. 17 of those are in loans, so there's about a $21 billion hit to the bottom line. What does not get included a whole lot, in far too many corners, is the actual debt load. So, since the Liberals came to power, national debt has more than doubled. It's now at $1.2 trillion. And we talk about some other programs that people clamor for, but okay. You know, in this province, we used to bemoan the fact that debt servicing was more than we spent on education. Get a load of the debt servicing issue nationally. So, given the 20-year high in interest rates, the cost to carry the $1.2 trillion debt went from $20.3 billion in 2021 to $46.5 billion. And that's coming right from the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland herself. And yes, some of the big announcements have been potentially helpful. You know, the National Lunch Program, about $1 billion to be spent on that. And then the Housing Infrastructure Fund and the rest. What we're also told is to look at the government's revenue side. When they try to readjust some spending matters, they look like they cut about $2.2 billion of spending, which once again is the proverbial drop in the bucket. It's taxes. Some of the leaked information is that there's going to be yet again another focus on the so-called 1%, the uber-wealthy Canadians, maybe those earning in excess of $300,000 per year, because that was the focus in last year's budget when they dealt with the minimum tax bracket issue. So is that going to be the case? Maybe, but when we look at productivity, and yes, people want the wealthy to pay their fair share. That's the rally cry we hear quite often, but how does it relate directly to things like productivity? Especially when there's probably going to be some measure against some of the big corporations and the so-called windfall tax, which is a recommendation coming straight from the House Finance Committee, not from one party or another. So you hear the NDP talk about it a lot, right? Especially taxes, windfall taxes on big corporations, grocery chains and otherwise. It has an absolute relation with productivity, which is potentially negative. And also you wonder how that relates to you and I as the consumer. It's not, I think, untoward to say that if some of the big corporations, let's just say grocery stores for a particular, if they have to pay more taxes based on what someone deems to be a windfall, that's going to be good for the government's bottom line on the revenue side. What's it going to mean for prices? What's it going to mean for jobs? Which I think kind of gets left out of the equation. It's easy enough to say, let's just tax them, windfall and or individuals who earn pretty solid dollar at $300,000 plus, but that comes with a variety of implications on the other end for consumers. What do you think? All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. Chris is going to kick us off talking about the closure of the Rocky Brook Bridge out in Badger. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Chris. You're on the air.
Good morning, sir. First-time caller.
Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. I believe a couple of people called in previously, but I was away for work, so I'm not sure what topics they covered. So this is regarding the closure of the Badger Rocky Brook Resource Road Bridge in Badger.
Yeah, we've had a call on it. I know about the issue. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So a few points I want to cover there this morning. I don't know much time I'll have, but there's 5 topics I want to bring to highlight about the closure of this bridge. One being the Crown land, how they sold us the packages, and this current status, what this does to the risk of forest fires, the recreational use that are on these roads, the current mining activities on the go there, and last, just what it does to try and attract people to move to our province by closing these resource roads. So those are my topics. If I do go on long-winded, I'll leave that to you to keep me under time management. But starting off with the Crown lands.
Yep.
Crown lands sold these lots in 3 draws in 1998, 2000, and 2007. In the 1998 and 2000 applications, they specifically referenced access to these lots via the 1.72 kilometer access from the Trans-Canada Highway. They sold these lots under what they deemed a cottage development area, which states to have road access. Once they don't have road access, it should be classified as a remote cottage area. So now with this bridge being closed, the only other access to this area is through a 40-kilometer back road. This is a groomed trail, so between December and April, there's no access by vehicle. And you know what the weather's like here in the spring. I would doubt you'd get in there in May and June either. And I wouldn't go in there in November because you don't know if you'll ever get a snowstorm, get stuck in there. But this leaves you with about 4 months access at the best on a road that I wouldn't call a road, more of an ATV trail. And so now, with that bridge gone, are these lots designated remote cottages, or are they still a cottage development area? I would think that we paid an higher value for a cottage lot, and now that we don't have a road anymore, do we redesignate it as a remote cottage lot? Also,
what would that designation mean? What's the implication of that?
Well, I was on the website, and when you go apply for a cottage lot on Crown lands, they have 2 designations. You have what you call standard cottage lots, which has road access. Then you have one that's called a remote cottage lot, which doesn't have road access. So the way Crown Land drew up these plans and sold them, they sold them under a cottage lot land development, which has road access. And now they've taken our access away. So we paid for a cottage lot. We didn't pay for a remote cottage lot, but yet now we got a remote cottage lot. So that's one situation.
Okay.
They sold 81 cottage lots in this area, and I believe there's now 7 permanent residents. And I know one family for sure moved home from the mainland. So what does that mean? Is this family now homeless? Do they have a second home to go to? What happens to the people out there with home insurance and their security? How about getting emergency vehicles in there? We've already had one serious medical emergency since the bridge closed. And most of these cabins, like all cabins in Newfoundland, are occupied by people, and seniors, people just retiring, people that are probably in a higher risk area for medical emergencies. So this puts a lot of stress on those people. And on top of that, the 81 cottages have got the Newfoundland Power system hooked up to them. So what's Newfoundland Power's take on this now? Now that they've got no access to go in and maintain their system, do they keep the system there, or do they have to disconnect the Newfoundland Power system?
I don't think it'd be necessary to disconnect, just given the fact that we've had Newfoundland Power going to some pretty remote parts of their transmission grid many, many times. If we're talking about the Labrador Island Link or other outages and power lines that are down, so they have the capacity to access that, even if we're talking about a more than an ATV trail than an actual road. So I don't think that's going to force a disconnect.
Okay. That's good to know, but I do believe someone said that Newfoundland Power tried to get in the spring. They couldn't get in because it was in a transition period between snow and summer and spring, and the road wasn't passable. So there are periods of time when I guess if there was an issue that they wouldn't have access. I guess, and you know, this is a very popular area. There's a lot of mining activity on the go out there. I think there's about 300 cabins in that area. So I mean, it's a potential area for more development that feeds into the rural communities. It adds a lot of income out around there. So it's a place that government should recognize as a place that they want to develop, not closing bridges and deterring people from spending money out in rural Newfoundland.
I think the last person who called on this issue did say that they went to the industry to talk about what a replacement would cost if the residents had to bear the cost themselves. I can't remember. I think he said $2 million or something. Do you happen to have a number?
No, I think there's two options. There was one with the Bailey Bridge that was about $1 million, and one just to fix the current bridge, which was about $500,000.
Okay, $1 million Bailey Bridge, fair ball.
Yeah. So that's the situation of the Crown Lands cabin areas. They sold us cottage lots. They took away our bridge access. We currently don't have, I would say, any access, even though they think we do, but if it's 4 months at best. So with the closure of this bridge, there's also the forest fire issue. I mean, I was on government's website yesterday reading through, and they state that early detection and an aggressive initial attack is their best opportunity to protect the forest, people, and keep the costs down. And so they've got a responsibility for firefighting and quick response. And now currently closing that bridge, the only way to fight a fire in there is by a water bomber. So with 81 cabin lots in there, if there's a cabin fire, a shed fire, if someone starts a fire from a campfire, it's going to be a water bomb. Unless you're going to use a garden hose or buckets. And we got the volunteer fire department of Badger 10 minutes away. They can't do it. They can't get in there. So that's very irresponsible for the government. Also, in 2022, we had that Paradise Lake fire, which brought to highlight the need for government to be more aggressive and more ready. So by removing a road where there's 81 cabins, there's not being very proactive in the potential forest fire. On their website, they also state that May and August are the biggest months for forest fires. We're in April now. May's just around the corner. We still don't have our bridge issue fixed. In 2021, they stated there were 85 fires. 47 of them were resident, 16 recreational. The means of ignition were match, lighter, or campfire. These were all human-caused sources of forest fires. So the government sold 81 cabin lots. They know that most of the forest fires are human-caused. They know they need to be proactive. And they know that this area is prone to forest fires. There's been 3 in this area already. So, again, what can they say? And it doesn't show them being very responsible. You know, you go and sell all these lots. You're going to have densely populated with people that you know in this high forest fire prone area, and they're going to cut off your only quick access to fighting fires. So that's forest fires. Recreational. I mean, we've had 2 groups now, the Newfoundland Snowmobile Federation and the Trailnet Association. They both wrote letters to the government expressing concern over the closure of this. It's a big revenue for the province having snowmobiles and four-wheelers using these areas.
Chris, just in the era of time management and what have you, so there's a question being posed, but I think you've kind of answered it based on the way the Crown Lands are designated. So Aaron says, how much responsibility should taxpayers have for providing infrastructure to cabins in a really remote area? So is that go back to how the Crown Land was designated in the first place upon purchase?
Well, if they sold lots in the Crown Land agreement, they state that the road access is 1.7, and the latest Crown Land development, they on a map, they put an arrow, they specifically highlight the highway is 2 kilometers away. So they sold all these lots to all these people, telling them that they had access to their cabin lots by a 1.72 kilometer road. And now they've taken the bridge access away, so they got no interest in it.
Fair enough. So I just want to get that clarification out there, because that's an important part of buying anything. You need to be told up front exactly what the current measures or conditions are. And if it says, okay, here's a piece of Crown land, it will be serviced by this 1.7 kilometre road, and then all of a sudden that goes away because the bridge is in bad shape, then it was sort of sold under false pretense. There's another Crown issue banging around too when we talk about this one particular cabin area where people bought a piece of Crown land, and unbeknownst to them, but known to government, there was going to be the potential for a wind farm on site. So there's, I think, a couple of fair concerns people bring forward. If the government knows that they're possibly not going to repair a bridge like the Rocky Brook Bridge, and then consequently what you bought is not what you got. I understand.
Yeah, and that's exactly the case. So, time management. So, in the letter from one of these organizations, the Newfoundland Trailnet, they put some statistics that are doing quickly. In 2020, there were 9,000 new ATVs, side-by-sides, and snowmobiles sold for $127 million in revenue. The estimated gas sales tax that year was 350,000 litres, which is about $500,000, give or take, and 16,000 trail passes for 1.9. So there's a lot of money being spent in the government on recreational use, and they all using these resource roads. If the government takes the stance of neglecting these roads and not upkeeping the bridges and choking off all the access, then there's a lot of lost revenue there for the government. And also, this area is a Moose Management Area 15 with 1,150 licenses, so it's a well-accessed, well-used area. And a part of the forestry and agriculture mandate is to recognize that these roads provide access for ecotourism, public recreation, hunting, and fishing. So they're supposed to recognize that these roads provide access to that and support it. And here we are saying that, these are well-used roads by a lot of different departments. The recreational groups in this area are stressing concern over it. You're making a lot of money by selling all this stuff. You're selling gas. The gas that you sell, there's a hidden road tax into that. There's meant for highways, but all these recreational vehicles, they don't use the highway. So what do you do with this extra revenue you're making from your road maintenance taxes that could go into supporting these backcountry roads? So the government's making money on recreational vehicles, on the gas sales. They've got responsibility to provide us access to the recreational and the ecotourism, and that's all we're asking. Yes, there's farmers' cabins in there, but it's also a recreational use is used by a lot of other people than the cabin owners. Next is the mining activity. I went on to the website there. There's a company called Lecor Gold. They've got a claim called Hodges Hills. If you go onto their website and zoom in to where all their biggest concentration of their activity is, which is highlighted with red blocks, it's all directly behind this Rocky Brook Bridge access road. They've been in there for the last couple of years. They've been using the bridge. Government knows that there's high potential, that they're probably going to be mining. There's going to be more activity in there. And yet the government wants us, a private group, to build a bridge so a commercial mining company can get access to the land. It doesn't make sense. I don't see how we can be responsible for providing access to a mining company. Fair
enough, Chris. And you did ask me to help mind your time management here, and we've arrived at that point. Right. But I understand your concerns. If government said that here's the conditions surrounding the sale of these pieces of Crown land did not live up to their side of the bargain, then it's a fair concern and a question to bring forward. I have to get to the break, but I appreciate your time as a first timer. Stay in touch.
Thanks, mate.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Clayton's in the queue. He wants to respond to an interesting call we had with a fellow named John yesterday, talking about the inability to bring meat from Labrador to the island. Let's talk to Clayton right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Clayton, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, first-time caller, really.
Back-to-back, fantastic.
When that fella called about having meat come into Newfoundland from other provinces in Labrador and so on, I'm just curious because we've shopped here, like live here in Newfoundland, and I was at Dominion, I guess, shouldn't really say, I guess, but anyhow, I was at Dominion, and they had beef that was there that said ungraded Mexican beef. So how is it that we can't import, we can't have meat come across from Labrador but we can have meat come in from Mexico.
Yeah, ungraded doesn't mean it wasn't inspected, though, and I guess that's the difference therein. So, like, corporations can transport the product. Like, I can buy Alberta beef in the grocery store here in St. John's, but of course that would have come from a Canadian Food Inspection Agency abattoir. So that bit of inspection has been done. Grading is simply the caliber or the quality as opposed to the inspection.
Okay, so in the case of the other day, was that as in like moose and so on from Labrador, or is that in general beef from Labrador?
I think he just made reference to beef. I mean, I think the same thing is from province to province. You're not supposed to, and people do it all the time. Like, I mean, if I go visit my relatives in Nova Scotia, I want to bring them some moose, and I got it in the cooler in my truck, well, then so be it. And that happens all the time. But from province to province, there's all sorts of restrictions what you can and cannot bring across provincial borders.
Understood. I was just wondering how, like, and I wasn't sure on the beef from Mexico ungraded. I was just curious how, so we can bring it in from truck, we'll say, province to province, as long as it's inspected, but we can't bring it across technically on our own.
You're not supposed to. I mean, I know it happens literally all the time.
Sure.
And the issue, the unlikely nature of having a piece of beef delivered to the island from somewhere that was not inspected for someone then to turn around and want to bring it to Labrador is a pretty unlikely scenario. So it all boils back to the fact that whether or not the origin has an inspection certificate, which would have to be the case for anything coming into the country, whether it be from South America, Central America, or Mexico, or whatever the case may be. And inside the country, of course, you are not supposed to, if you get wild meat, of course you can quarter it up yourself. You can process it yourself in your garage. But when we talk about traditional farm animals, cows, for instance, if you have a black Angus, you have to have that processed at a Canadian Food Inspection Agency abattoir. That's the way it's supposed to work. Right.
Okay, well, that was my only rant, and I thank you for taking my call.
I appreciate your time. It's an interesting add-on to the conversation because we all see it. Same thing with a lot of the things on the grocery store shelves or in the coolers or freezers. I'll just go to seafood now for a minute. It's remarkable to me that given the quality of what comes out of the ocean in our waters, that we don't have it absolutely dominating the cooler and freezer space in our grocery stores. It's just unreal. Buying Japanese and Russian product or Greenland or Iceland when we're harvesting right there. I can see the boats coming into the harbour in St. John's, and yet it's hard to get a feed of that fresh stuff unless I go to a restaurant.
I agree, 100%, and that's like international travel. I mean, I understand when I come back from the U.S. and I bring meat products. I mean, they're confiscated. I mean, yep. Within reason. I mean, that's it. And it's kind of strange when you can't transport a steak that you got, in the store while you're waiting for the boat.
Oh, you can. If you bought a steak in a grocery store, you can go wherever you want with it because it would have been in a grocery store because it came from a Canadian Food Inspection Agency abattoir. So as opposed to raw meat that has not been through an accredited abattoir. But I know exactly what you're talking about, and it is sort of odd. There's tons of restrictions about bringing anything from the floral or fauna world into the country, and then you factor in things like mad cow disease, which affected the beef industry here in this country and in the UK. All of a sudden, massive restrictions are in place.
Yes, and even comes to fruit and vegetables.
It does.
I understand we traveled back from a wedding in the Dominican Republic, and one of our people that were with us, a family member, had an apple in her purse that was, 2 or 3 bites, and she was held up because she had an apple with a couple bites out of it.
Yeah, those restrictions are very real, and no one ever gets away with it if you come through security.
Right.
Someone just sent me a link saying, here's info on an exemption that allows provincially, not federally, inspected by the Canadian Food Agency, inspected meat to move between provinces to food shortages. I'll have a look at that link because there's probably more information there than I have in the top of my head. Appreciate the time as a first-time caller. That's back to back.
Have a great one.
You too. Thanks for this.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. There you go. And I do think many people wonder out loud exactly why we don't see as much Newfoundland and Labrador seafood in our grocery stores as we think we should. You know, there are direct sales opportunities for fish harvesters, but it still never makes sense to me as to why I'm buying so much product from other countries when what I really want is product from here. And I want it fresh, which should be ample opportunity. Let's take a break. Lots of time for you when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello. So just calling today, actually. First-time caller. So I reside on the west coast of the province of Newfoundland. I've been here for 10 years, and I've seen a lot, I guess, as you would living in an area. So I had an opportunity to work union jobs. I worked union jobs away, Muskrat Falls, Bull Arm. Wonderful opportunity, as you know. And also I decided then I'm going to try something different and go to healthcare. Wonderful choice, because that was my dream job. Caring for the elderly and most vulnerable, what a blessing. How rewarding. And my dream job, I can honestly say, as you know, healthcare is in the news a lot. There's shortages, Patty. There's shortages, and there's long hours. That is expected. Would you agree?
I don't know if we should necessarily have to expect long hours. I mean, in a properly...
No, and you shouldn't.
No.
You shouldn't. Because why? I know the root of the problem. Because, unfortunately, I'm a strong, proud union, I'll say man, because woman is before man. So, obviously, you know, a woman or, you know. So, my upbringing, Patty, I came from a very strong union. My dad was a strong, strong union man. So, this was instilled in me. All I know is my dad was a well-known and respected union man. I'm not going to disclose the union, as you know, private, but so my upbringing was very unique. So most outport communities, as you know, back in the day, the dad worked away and the mom stayed home with her kids. That was back in the day. Now, today is a changing world, as you know. Usually it's the two parents need to work to provide for the family, as you know, the increased cost of living. So what a blessing to grow up in. My dad, like I said, is at the top. And I'm a proud daddy's girl. There's no one can come close to him or my pop because they were hard workers. They did everything they could and more to provide for their family. They're still doing that, actually. My pop is probably listening. Hello, Pop. He's 93 years old, Patty, independent, living at home. Drives his Ford Ranger, puts in his full vegetable garden, watches his hockey, the news, likes to have a black horse, and is still providing today for his 2 youngest children. What a man. You don't hear that often. So I don't know if I'm on a time crunch here.
No, go ahead.
I'll try to cut it in a nutshell. So my upbringing, like I said, I had a very unique upbringing because you're proud, I would say Bay girl, I'll leave it at that, but also a strong Catholic upbringing, which is what I needed. Because only for that, I could have been in a lot of trouble. And as a private, like I had a very, I'll just say, hard childhood, and I'm going to leave it at that. So what an opportunity for me. As you know, I struggled to find my way. I'm a very well-known and respected person, and I could have took the wrong route. I'll just say that.
So I'm sorry, just in the effort to get to where you want to go in the call, you know, with your upbringing and healthcare shortages and long hours, what's the ultimate point you're attempting to make?
Okay, so what I'm going to say is, I first went to, because I guess I'm going to say I figured it all out, like all the shortages and everything that's going on in Newfoundland. It makes sense because I worked in the union jobs and now in healthcare. What's the problem? They're trying to make it private and get rid of the unions. This is the problem, Patty. There's underhanded stuff going on that no one knows about. So
Can you give me an example? Because the unions are well entrenched in the public service.
Yeah,
well entrenched.
Absolutely. And I'm as strong and always will be, as I was told by my dad. He got me to my first union job. And just a heads up, because I didn't ever work a union job. So my dad said, okay, there's management. They're there to manage, and your union got your back. And that's me today, 100%. But we need strong unions, because what's happening, I'm not going to disclose the union members, the unions itself, they've been targeted. And when I'm saying, as you know...
Can you give us an example? Because I'm not really sure where you're going here, because, is it in relationship to, say, travel nurses being a big part of the system, even though we've reduced the reliance?
Travel nurses, as you know, I watch NTV News every night. It's coming to like the NAPE union. Thank God, what a beautiful, strong union. I'm not a member of the NAPE union. I'm not going to disclose my union, but I know the NAPE union is a registered nurse union based out of St. John's.
No, registered nurses have their own union. Just hold on a second. Yes, registered nurses have their own union.
And here in Corner Brook as well. So I'm a healthcare worker, but I'm not a NAPE union member. I'm QP.
Okay.
So I noticed right away, having worked in the union job, like I felt like maybe my union let me down because I didn't see them. I reached out to him several times not to get a reply back, Patty. I'm a paying union member, so the president or whoever they're going underneath, wouldn't you reply back, a concerned union member, wouldn't you reply back to them to have a chat with them to see what's going on?
In general terms, sure, but it's hard for me to...
And as you know, I'm a very understanding person. QP is a large... I'm not the only member.
No,
so I'm very understanding. Obviously, okay, maybe it might take a week, it might take whatever, but just to touch base and say, okay, Natalie, sorry, I gave out my name. We have your concern. And let's, as I'm, okay, let's get this dealt with before it escalates. But nothing has still happened in 4 years, Patty. There's a problem. So what's the problem? People are afraid. Why would you be afraid to contact me? I'm a very mild, anyone who knows me, I'm very mild, easygoing, friendly. I'm a huge animal lover, a cat lover. Visit me, and... So I'm not understanding why, but I guess being removed, like I went to work March the 4th. It was a bad situation. I'm not going to disclose that. So I've been off work since.
Sure, but without disclosing enough information, I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about here with the intrusion of private.
No, so for healthcare now, like I don't want to get myself in trouble as I'm because I'm a first time caller.
What you can do then?
So for a healthcare worker.
Hold on. What you can do to actually give me some information so I can understand what you're talking about, and your privacy will be absolutely protected. If you send me some actual details via email, then I can understand exactly what we're talking about, and maybe we can have a back and forth on that front, because and look, you don't have to disclose anything on here if you don't want to, but not really entirely sure where we're going. So as a QP member, I have some idea with some of the health professionals represented by QP in what areas they work, and then I'll probably have a better understanding of what sort of private intrusion you might be referring to. So would that be beneficial to you?
Yeah, like you said, because I don't want to, I guess, overstep my boundaries. I don't want to maybe lose, be at risk of losing my job or something, right?
Yeah, okay, then you can send me a private email and I won't share it with anyone.
Okay, and so I'll get your email. I will. Thank you. So I'll just stay on the line and get your email, I guess.
It's just openline@vocm.com.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Patty. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, before we get to the news, let's see here. Line number 1. Gerard, you're on the air. Gerard?
Hello, Patty?
Yes, hello.
Yes, Patty. How's it going? Patty, we spoke last week. There's no change. I went to my MHA. They're not going to help me or change anything. And I was given 5 or 6 calls. I keep numbers. I called each person. Only one person called me back, but I know they really can't help me, but they pity me, my situation. But Paddy, there's really no change. I know you're a busy man, but if you don't mind me calling in once a week, letting you know what's on the go, when things do get better, I'll even let you know about that, you know?
Well, hopefully that'll be the case the next time we speak, that things have improved and you've seen some adjustment to your home care hours. Because this is not just about one individual or another. We've got an ongoing conversation in the province and the country about how home care should work. You know, when we look at some of the forecasted numbers, for instance, with people with a variety of disabilities and or ailments, and whether or not there's going to be a huge spike, which we're told, in Alzheimer's and dementia, and how we prepare for that future. The want for people who are able to and want to remain in their own home if they have the required level of home care support. So that whole concept of aging in place, and that's going to come. There's going to be more of a national conversation on that front. But it's fine to talk about it, but it's quite another to actually put the policies and supports in place to make it a reality. And again, I don't really quite understand why governments haven't done the simple math on this one. If we're going to say, okay, if Gerard needs 30 hours a week of home care versus if Gerard is forced to move into an institution like a long-term care facility because he can't support himself at home without additional hours, I guarantee we're going to spend more money and you're going to be worse off.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Nobody wants that.
Paddy, excuse me, you can hear me now. I only need so much help. And I mean, when they took it away, it was shocking, you know. I mean, they're giving me the run around. They're even telling me, oh, I'm not going to get no supplies, and I'm not worried about that right now. But for me to cook over a stove is nervousing, is wrecking, and I'm trying to do my best. So I'm very independent, and I just need that and some other thing done. And I'm not need very much. I can clean, vacuum my house and things like that. And you know, I need a bar put on my bath because of. Or I have a steel plate in the back of my head, and that's why I can't cook over a stove. I can't be stooping a lot. And I don't want to go into an institution. It's bad enough when you do something. It's like an institution when you go home in a lonely house. But, Paddy, it is a big fight, and I think that there is a lot of people out there like me in my situation, but I don't think the government is taking care of the disabled people like they should. They only say that when they come to the door, and I'm really disappointed with my MHA.
I appreciate the update. Hopefully it's a more positive one next time around.
We'll talk next week, Paddy.
Thanks, Gerard. You take good care.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, looking forward to this one. Ron called some while ago, maybe last week, with a concern regarding trout on Fogo. It was a really bizarre set of circumstances, and not being able to get much in the way of traction for people to understand what's happening and what can be done to rectify the situation. Ron gives us the trout update from Fogo Island right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Ron, you're on the air.
Good day, Paddy.
Good day to you.
No, I'm finding about the trout bite that was running down by the side of the road. What happened there, when they changed the way the road was, they made an upgrade on the road. And whoever drawed up the plans, I know now, I got to find out, they made a doo-doo there because they changed the way the water been running for millions of years. And I'm not only talking about one pond. There's 16 ponds that runs up from Hull runs down into the pond we call Fosco Pond in Heat Bay.
Just 1 second, Ron. 1 second. Before we go any further, for someone who did not hear the call yesterday, describe what you're seeing and then give me this update.
Okay, what we were saying there, I know the people that lived there, I was in Nova Scotia fishing for a few years. People were saying that the trout was running down by the side of the road, and there was people picking up trout. Like, I know one guy said he picked up 25 or 30, and somebody else said he picked up a lot. And the seagulls was in there, and the crows and everything was eating the trout. Because once the trout run down along the side of the road, they end up at a dead end. So there's nowhere where they could go. So what's happening there, we was losing a lot of trout because there's 16 ponds running this way. So I called, every office in, I called I called the environment, I called Minister of Fisheries, told this by Petty. I was trying to have it. I went to Clifford Small's office in Gander there, and me and Ryan did have a few words back and forth. Well, we're only human beings. Things we said probably wasn't right. But anyway, Ryan did text me back, and he apologized to me with the things that were said. He said he apologized. I understand that. But now, anyway, the PC party is in there now. Hopefully now, the ones that's responsible, the government made a do-boo there. What I'm going to do next is try to get those ponds restocked, because those ponds is going to die if there's no trout going to go back in them, right?
Absolutely. So it's all about the reconfiguration of the road not to accommodate the natural water run.
Yes.
Okay.
Now the water is running back in Costco Pond now like it did all of our life, you know what I mean? And when my son come down there about a month ago, he's from Loughborough, he's 15, he said, Dad, this is where I caught my first trout. I said, yes, this is where I caught my first trout. Like, we went to 2 ponds, we couldn't get a trout to eat. So, you know what I mean? Me and Colton there, he done the work I didn't because of my backup up, excuse me. But I'm saying the public hearing on Fogo Island, the deep down on it, but they knew this was going on, and nobody never stood up to the plate. So I got at it, and finally now, thanks to the Department of Highways, they started their Friday. They got the dam done, and the missus that did over the highways, she said that we'll put the dam back. We'll make sure that everything is done right. So, okay, it's all done now. I've been up there a few times taking pictures. And, Paddy, the trout will not run down by the side of the road no more now. They come in the brooks now. They'll go on like Costco Pond. They can leave Costco Pond and go on to salt water like they did for thousands of years. Now, I don't know how many trout is destroyed, but I know those ponds that I fished in seem like to me there's nothing left. Now, there might be a handful, but there's not the quality of trout like it used to be, right? So I think now is the time for the government to step in here and try to get those ponds restocked, because the government was wholly responsible. It wasn't the contractor. I got that found out. The government, whoever drawn up the plans for the road, the architect or whatever his name is, that's who made the boo-boo. So the government is wholly responsible for this accident.
Well, I mean, when the government goes out to hire a contractor to do any of that kind of work, it's based on the parameters put forward by the government. That's
right. Yeah. So now I'm hoping, well, we have to Jim Mazine, because he is from Fogo Island, perhaps we will get something done there. I can't say for sure, because I know the Liberal government never stood up to the plate, and the Liberal government of, well, put it this way, I drove across Newfoundland. I think it's the worst road condition that we have ever had in our life. I mean, it's terrible what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
If the PCC government can change it, God bless them.
Well, I don't know if there's any one party better suited than another to do road work. I do know that the province is quite pleased with themselves that they're spending record amount of money on road work this paving season, somewhere in excess of $200 million, when in years past we probably averaged in and around $80-90 million. And of course, the gas tax was created to do road and bridge work. We bring in way more gas tax money than we ever spend on roads, but there's a record spend coming this year. Now, we're never going to satisfy every kilometre of road in this province on an annual basis, but you're right, the roads are bad. I don't think anyone can argue that basic point, because they are bad. And we'll see what improvement comes to bear with this year's paving season, because that is a lot of money, but of course you can spend 10 times that and there's still some bad roads.
Paddy, I drove from Nova Scotia to Newfoundland. Where I live in Nova Scotia is 8 hours from the ferry. There is a park there right outside of Nova Scotia, there, Sydney. It's called the Go of Arm. And a lot of campers, now not last year before last, they come across on the ferry, they park their house there. And there was 26 campers from the States, big motorhomes. And one guy off time, he bust open 2 tires in Newfoundland. He said, I will never go back there. I love the people, I love the province, I love the place. But he said, the highway, we got cow pets, he said, in the States, better than what the roads are in Newfoundland. So the Newfoundland government is only driving away the people that are supposed to come here and enjoy themselves.
And there's a couple of notorious bad spots. Like, I mean, for instance, if I get off the ferry in Port aux Basques or Argentia, the first stretch road I hit is pretty terrible.
Yes.
And the place is also dirty.
Nova Scotia, there's all the road in Nova Scotia is there's a divided highway with a crosser. Right?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of divided highway, and there's also a lot of tolls, which is another thing I don't think people in this province are quite in the mood for, is to have to pay a toll. But that's also a feature of some highways in Nova Scotia and other parts of the country.
Well, that's what I brought up on the ferry the other day, on the ferry to Fogo Island. I said to the guy in the office there, I said, in Nova Scotia, we can buy a yearly pass. Why can't I buy a yearly pass come to Fogo Island? Why have you got to have that man there stood up all day long? Why can't we buy a yearly pass? Now, I know there's the foreigners just coming back and forth. Well, they're only going to pay once a year. As for me, living on Fogo Island, I say the foreigners live in Fogo Island and change homes. I think we should be able to buy a yearly pass. I don't think we should have to pay every day or every time we cross.
I wonder how they would evaluate how much a yearly pass should be, because some folks would only leave, a dozen times a year. Other folks might leave 200 times a year. So I wonder how you'd come up with a realistic annual fee. That'd be the trick, wouldn't it?
I don't know, but they do have that in Nova Scotia. I know that.
Oh, they got it in BC. They got it in a variety of places, yeah.
There's one more thing I'd like to mention about the trout there. Now, it's all done.
Okay.
I'm hoping now that the BC party, if Clifford's flying again, they're out down to the understands that those ponds get to be restocked. But there's one more problem on Fogo Island. I've been told about it, and I seen it Friday. Caribou on Fogo Island is disappeared. They said there was a couple of thousand there a few years ago. Now there's no caribou left there. The coyotes is killing every caribou. Now Friday, I was driving to Holland River. I seen this caribou come out of the woods, so I stopped, was going to take a picture. The caribou laid down. Now, in a matter of 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I looked and there's two coyotes coming out of the woods and they jumped on her belly. They started jumping on her. She got up and she started chasing the two coyotes. Now, we never got a chance to get a picture because the caribou was chasing the coyotes. So the coyotes drove her over this embankment where I couldn't see. Now, this was 8 o'clock in the evening, just getting dark. So I got up the next morning, and I went up and I walked down around the bar and over the bank, and I never seen the caribou no more. But Liberal government in Newfoundland knows that those coyotes don't belong to Newfoundland. They come across on the house years ago. And you talk to no other, you talk to low sport, you can talk to anyone in Newfoundland. They're killing the rabbits, they're killing the moose, the caribou. They're destroying the foxes too, they're saying.
But there's open
Why
season.
haven't our government put a price on their head like $500 that makes it worthwhile for the people to go hunting and kill it?
There's open season on coyotes, $25, which is probably not enough. There's provinces that pay as much as $200. There's other provinces that, if you're obliged, for instance, to submit the skull to the provincial government for a variety of scientific purposes, then in some jurisdictions, by the time you actually kill, process, and deliver, in this case, coyote, it could be upwards of $1,000 per, which I don't know if that's a realistic amount to be paying, but it is open season on coyotes. People can take them out as much as they want, and all you have to do is deliver the pelt and you get $25.
Teddy, $25 is not enough. Okay, I'll explain what I think, what I've seen here. Okay, you go moose hunting. Now, I know people on full go on a caribou license here, and they never got their caribou because there's nothing left there. So, okay, 4 people. Takes the truck, he goes up the campfire, and he goes moose hunting. They don't get their moose, he comes back home. Okay, no doubt, 4 people are going to spend $1,000, or probably $2,000. Every moose that's being killed here today by the coyotes and every caribou, the government is going in the hole big time. They can't see the limit themselves or what? What's going on? Is all the government people too blind to see anything? To me, it's shameful to let those coyotes destroy the few caribou and the few moose that we got here. If the moose population goes booming, issue more license. There's lots of people in Newfoundland love to have a caribou license or a moose license every year. I think right now, if the PC government goes across Newfoundland, I hope they do. Because the Liberal government, the way I look at it, they've been in power, they're not doing anything, get rid of it. Danny Williams is going to burn our flag. He should have burned it because Danny Williams had to fight to get what he got. Man, I'm telling you, it's shameful to see the way that our province is run down.
Yeah.
It's shameful. Not only the forestry, it's the fishery. Everything is different off Newfoundland. You go to Nova Scotia. I can talk here for 2 hours. It's shameful what I'm saying back here.
I don't think I've heard a single pledge regarding coyotes from the PCs, but I guess when we start to campaign actively, all these topics will be up for debate. Ron, I'm off to the break. I appreciate the update.
Well, Paddy, I'll explain to all full owners the trout is running the right way, and thanks to the highways there, the men and women that work there, they cut the dam put back. And put this way, Paddy, I just hope that somebody steps up to the plate and make the government restock those ponds.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. All right, bye-bye.
Okay.
Oops, that was a bit quick. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Cease wants to talk about the results of the by-election out of Fogo Island, Cape Friels, where Jim McKenna took the seat back for the PCs away from the Liberals, and a real flip into the general election results. So when Derek Bragg won, the late Derek Bragg, he got about 2,500 votes. The Tories got about 1,500 votes. This go around, the PC candidate got about 1,000 votes more than the Liberals. So talk to Cease about that, and Michelle wants to talk about wind turbines. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Cease, you're on the air.
Paddy, yes. I'd like to congratulate Jim McKinnon on winning the by-election.
Sure.
And that's exactly what happens when the government are not listening to the people. For example, you've had a lot of calls there on those wind turbines, very knowledgeable people talking about it, and the government goes ahead and they do what they want, and the government is not listening, and I think the PCs are going to sweep across the island.
Now, the PCs haven't spoken out against these wind projects.
I know that, but still, the government of Newfoundland are not listening. They're the government right now. They make the decisions.
Yeah, but of course, the opposition is there for a critically important reason. You would think if they were opposed to these proposals, they would have said so. I mean, that's just a matter of politics, isn't it? Yeah,
well, maybe they are. I don't know. But anyway, all I got to say is I'm glad that Mr. McKinnon won, and the Liberals got a lot of issues facing them, and they're not dealing with them.
So the makeup now of the House of Assembly, of course, the Liberals in a majority government at this point, holding 22 of the 40 seats heading into Monday's by-election. The Conservatives with MHA elect Jim McKenna will have 12, NDP 3 and the Independents 2.
And the NDP, Jim Dinn, well, you know, they're all part of the Liberals in Ottawa because they support them 100%, and they're not against the carbon tax. Jim Dinn is wasting his time. He ain't going to get any votes in Newfoundland. There are not very many anyway.
Well, the carbon tax is a federal issue, right?
I know that, but they're supporting it. They're not complaining about it. They're not talking about the cost of living anymore. That's the NDP.
The NDP
so
don't.
I think we're Pardon?
The NDP don't talk about cost of living issues. That's kind of their thing.
Well, you never hear them talking about the carbon tax. I mean, we're paying another 8 or 10 cents a liter for gas, and I mean, you know, that's going to be added to groceries, the transportation.
The carbon tax increase on the 3rd or the 1st of the month was just over 3 cents. Yeah.
Anyway, I think the PCs are going to sweep the province.
And then, of course, the PUB, when we talk about 3 cents, so people can be rightfully concerned with whatever concerns them. But a week after that, the price of gas went up 7.6 cents. So I think sometimes we turn our fury at, and I don't mean Andrew Fury, I mean fury, at different things that are very, very political as opposed to what are some of the other root causes, I wonder, for just how expensive gas is and food is.
Why do we need the PUB?
I would think so, yes.
Seems like all they're doing is increasing prices.
Well, what would replace the PUB? Because I don't think we should ever consider putting decisions regarding the price of fuel or insurance premiums or the taxi fares or anything like that in the hands of politicians. That would be the worst thing we could possibly do.
Yeah, but it seems like the PUB are not doing a very good job. All they're doing is raising the prices. So there must be some other way we can control the prices.
I don't know what it would be, and of course the PUB there to be the regulator inside the utilities and rate applications and the like, but I mean just imagine if politicians were able to determine what the price of gas is. So the by-election in Fogo Wild and Cape Friels, what do you think the government would do? Lower the price of gas, right? Just one of those easy pocketbook issues that they could manipulate, which would be just the very worst thing we could possibly suffer. Not to say the PUB's done a good job, because they haven't even really explained to us exactly how they apply their formula. We are not in lockstep with Atlantic Canada, the rest of Atlantic Canada, when we see the fluctuation in the price of gas. We were told not that long ago that they were going to come forward with, you know, as opposed to simply saying, due to market conditions, spell it out for us. Exactly what do the inputs look like? Why are we so different than other parts of the country? I know we have a geographical concern with importation and distribution and all the rest of it, but it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
But, Paddy, the way it's going right now, everything in Newfoundland is in a big mess. The fishery, even the Crown land situation. The people are being tortured by Crown land debates, and we're getting a lot of calls on that, and the government is not listening. I don't know what they can do. The government's not listening to the people. That's what I'm saying.
And I appreciate your time and saying it on the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking my call.
My pleasure, Steve. Stay in touch.
Have a good day, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Michelle, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
I'm calling in to talk about wind turbine project. NTV had a question past weekend, regarding do you agree or disagree? Simple question. Now, keep in mind, it's only a select few got to see this or knew about it or whatever, but I would like to make the comment, 70% voted against this project. That speaks numbers, I would think, for this project moving further in our province.
I don't know if that means a row of beans, to be honest, because these non-scientific polls are generally juiced by people who are displeased with one thing or another. Same thing with the question of the day on VOCM. It's just a place for people to have their say. Whether or not that's reflective of the actual population remains to be seen. I don't know what the percentage is.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. So I will challenge that and say, don't you agree there should be a vote, same as we do for election? Well, let's vote, because this is a big project, as you know. People don't understand what this project is. I had a girl say to me the other day, sure, ain't that going to increase or decrease our light bills? No, it has nothing to do with us. People are unknown to it.
Well, it does have something to do with us and our power bills. It does.
It's not. But for what it's going to destroy our land, for how it's going to affect. People are complaining of the trout. We're not going to have trout once these come. We're not going to have moose. This is deathly, and I think more people need to research this to every extent. And I'm not saying, Google this, that. Go back years. This will kill our animals, our wildlife. It will take away our lands, all our berries. Plus, make people sick.
Well, it will limit access to certain areas where people are used to having free reign, whether it be for berry picking or otherwise. And I'm not so sure how much research is going to be very helpful. You know why I say that? Because these are turbines that are not common across the world where there's wind farms. I mean, they're nowhere near the... Well, that makes researching
so-called I'll challenge you again. I'll challenge you again. Why are they agreeing to put this here when they haven't had the facts to say, hey, we've done research and you're going to be okay, Newfoundlanders. You are going to be okay. You are safe to have this here. But yet we can watch documentaries from people in Ontario who've got them next to them. People in Port-au-Port Peninsula are complaining right now of things all over, of how it's affecting them. And nobody is listening because they want this project to come here. Once this project comes here, just watch. Marystown, Bureau Peninsula, all of that, they want all of us in here. They want to shut that down and have Newfoundland as one big dump for Germany as these wind turbines. And it's sad, and it's very disappointing and shameful as far as I'm concerned.
Michelle, people are already impacted on the Port-au-Port Peninsula for something that hasn't been built?
Yep, they are. You go to talk to people. They don't want that out there. Nobody do. But the government thinks that they can make this rule for us Newfoundlanders. I'm going to be 50 in June, and I stand to this. And I'm going to be honest with you, and I've said it to a lot of people. If the government looked at me tomorrow and said, hey, Michelle, we're going to give you $1,000 a week if you sign this piece of paper and shut your mouth to have this wind turbine, you know what I would tell them to do? Shove it where the sun don't shine. I would not take it because I have children and I have going to have grandchildren and so forth that I want to be able to come to our beautiful prestige island without hearing whoa, whoa, whoa and all of this and people getting sick and everything else and then ripping up our lands. It's not a good project. It's not worthy and beneficial to Newfoundland whatsoever. Absolutely not.
Well, one thing you said, just if we're going to try to throw some accurate information out there, it will have an implication with the integration to our public grid. And we don't know how that's going to work yet. We don't know how much we're going to pay for power that they sell us. We don't know how much they're going to pay for power that we sell them. So it absolutely has an implication on my power bills. To what extent? We simply do not know. Pretty important piece of information.
People are like, hey, like I said, I'm going to be 50. I want to stay here. I work. I got a full-time job, doing okay, but there's lots that want to work, want to move back. There's no work. No, there's not a lot. However, once they put this in, yes, you're going to have construction work for, it's going to be, 2-year project max.
It's longer than that. It's longer than that.
It depends, but roughly, of construction. Ripping up our province. Once that's done, it's like, boys, here's your eye slip. Go get your pogie. And now we're going to, that's it. They're done. So now these guys are sitting home on unemployment. They can't go fishing because the ponds, you can't go around there because the wind turbines.
So people who are working on the projects as skilled tradespeople will all of a sudden not be able to fish? Like, what does that...
No, they're going to fish when this project is detrimental. So this project is going to kill our fish eventually, Patty. This project is going to kill our lands. It is a poisonous, deathly... I just cannot believe. I'm floored. Totally floored. Totally. And anyone I speak to across Canada, they're floored, and especially people Alberta who have the turbines next to them, they're like, man, fight this, because they know. And it's sad. And my thing today, I guess, basically what my call is, we had 70% who did see it, and Facebook, it blew up. Why? Because people were like, I didn't know. I vote no. So my suggestion to everyone on Facebook from that post, Patty, was to email their MHAs and their mayors expressing their concerns for their communities and the well-being of their province. And I guess I will challenge and ask the government to do a vote and have it a legal vote. And
you think there should be a referendum?
Yeah, there should. There should. It needs to be something because, people, I agree with the other callers, we're not being heard. And I'm not getting into liberal, PC, all that. No, don't matter who. You are people who are there for us. We're not here for you. And they are not hearing us with our complaints and our concerns. And we are only trying to look out for the best for our province because we love our province.
Some people in the area, they want this, right?
I know they do. I absolutely do. But the people that I've spoken to that have wanted it, not everyone, but the ones that I did, they weren't informed of all the effects that this causes on the environment. They weren't informed of the health effects that this is going to cause to people. They weren't informed of this company coming in and grabbing Crown land and saying, you don't own that Crown land, that cabin, gone, get out.
No, we're leasing
the land.
Crown land. We do, and we will continue to own it. They're leasing the land.
I know that, but they will take the land to rent. So if they take the land to rent, Patty, you got to move out of your cabin because you don't own your Crown land.
No, that's not how this works.
That's how it is working, though. You talk to people...
But you're trying to make the same issue of people having cabins or homes on Crown land the same issue as it relates to World Energy GH2. It's just simply not accurate, that's all. So the land is leased for a specific purpose and one purpose only. That's it.
Yeah.
They can't turn around and do anything else but what the conditions set forward in the lease contract are talking about and the conditions put forward. So that's how that's going to work. And it's a good thing that it's a lease of land, not a purchase of land, because then we'd have zero control unless we get into zoning for commercial and industrial and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Michelle, I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good day. Bye.
And when people talk about things like the buffer, and the buffer zone for these wind turbines and proximity to residences is a kilometre. And plenty of people don't think that's enough. Aaron sent me along a link regarding some of the exact same size, scope and scale turbines and what they're dealing with in Australia. So they call it the default setback distance of 1.5 kilometres between a residence or dwelling and the nearest wind turbine for turbines with a tip height of up to 200 metres. For tip heights greater than 200 metres, a longer setback may be more appropriate to accommodate increased visual amenity impacts. Local topography, existing trees and vegetation, as well as terrain, need to also be considered when applying any default setback measure. Of course, that's accurate. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, affordability in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the Ward 4 councillor in the town, City of St. John's. That's Tom Davis. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
I want to start off with recognizing National Volunteer Week this week, 14th to 20th. And the city is partnering with the Community Sector Council holding a volunteer kind of speed dating event at the farmers market today from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. So people can drop in. There's 40 local organizations. So we encourage people to get out and find that meaning in life that can be found through volunteering.
I mean, there's a volunteer crisis in the country. There really truly is, and the pandemic really threw a monkey wrench in. You know, when some of that work that was normally being done by these charities and community organisations, when that ceased, some of their volunteers left and didn't come back. In addition to that, you know, I wonder why it hasn't worked out a little bit better with some of the high school curriculum that requires some volunteer hours, and why more of those high schoolers have not continued on post-high school to continue being volunteers, which seems to be also a bit of a problem. You know, it's one thing to do it because you need it for credits, quite another to do it because you get some self-satisfaction and or the feeling of giving back and actually helping people as a volunteer. And I wish people Happy Volunteer Week. If we backed out their contribution to the community, whether it be measures of GDP or otherwise, we would be doomed.
Well, a really good example is volunteer firefighters. If you compare them to what the St. John's regional firefighters make, every small community would really, well, they wouldn't be able to afford them. So it's, you know, just right there alone, saving lives and giving back to their communities. So, here.
Fair enough. Let's get into affordability before we have to go. Well,
affordability was one of the things that I wanted to touch on, but I want to start with the fact that humans we're not logical, and we think we are, and we're emotional, reactive creatures, and we create narratives or stories that help to justify our choices or our lack of choices. And I just want people to kind of reflect on that. In the past, we looked to authority figures to signal that we needed to react to perceived threats or to be more proactive. And, you know, they were various forms: parents, grandparents, other seniors, priests, merchants, union leaders, doctors, politicians, and other senior community leaders. And now that we've kind of got a little bit different perspective, as a little bit more, I guess, self-centered, a little more independent thinking population, I think it's important now that we've now basically nominated ourselves to be those authority figures. And I think we need to all step back, and when we're speaking strongly about something or thinking we got the answers, perhaps we need to reflect upon the story that we've created, the narrative we've created to kind of justify that position. And I just want to challenge a couple of these kind of self-soothing narratives that are floating around out there. And I think a lot of us need to reflect upon them, because anybody who stands up and says they have the answers to anything most likely hasn't thought enough about it, because everything is very, very, very complicated. So one big one, which you touched on, was affordability. You know, now the buzzword is young people cannot afford a roof over their heads. You know, and this is being said and kind of reinforced. And I hear this from a lot of 20-plus-year-olds that I come into contact with, family, friends, coworkers. And my answer to that is, it's hard. But it's always be hard. And the answer is, you know, education, self-improvement, and probably most important, deferred pleasure-seeking spending of your money. And, you know, a lot of older people will listen and recall that when they got started, you know, debt wasn't such a big thing, and all the pleasures of life, you know, that wasn't part of their thought. You know, the coffee shops or the skip the dishes. And when you focus on the pleasure seeking and you couple that with kind of a societal reinforced immaturity, low ambitions, the defeatism that comes with believing you can't do it, low work ethic, and it's basically setting these young people up to fail.
Yeah, I think we lump them all in that same envelope a little bit too cavalierly, to be honest. And look, the way that some people at a certain age view the youth of today and their lack of work ethic and, you know, complaining about the prices and whatnot, things have changed, and not because of young people either. I mean, there was not that long ago that I could be working at the phone company and 35 years, my wife stayed home and raised the children, I could afford a house, I could afford a car, I could afford to put my children through university. That's just no longer a reality of life any longer. So as much as we can blame the youth for a variety of societal ills, and so they are responsible for some of them, but the affordability issue, not at all. Like, not whatsoever. So they can make their own lifestyle choices, you know, to stay home on a Friday night, get skip the dishes, versus go to the grocery store and save themselves 80% on their meal. That's things they do on their own. And why are homes so expensive? I'll tell you why. Because homeowners want them to be expensive. Because it's the biggest piece of equity they'll ever own, or for 99% of us, it's the biggest piece of equity we'll ever own. And my house is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So, the reason why home prices are high, because supply has not been met, and people like expensive homes. Why? Because they get to sell their home for maximum dollar.
Yeah, 100% correct. And of course, as we define a home, it's changed. I mean, back in the 50s, the average house was 850 square feet. Now it's 2,500 square feet, and the finishings inside are way different. And, you know, all the different parts have have obviously increased in cost, but a lot of that is by choice. So I just want to touch on that. That was one thing. That quality of another, I guess, a narrative that we create is that quality of life equals less work and less challenge. And that seems to be something, again, that, when people look at me and say, well, why did you run to be? You must be crazy. And my answer to that is, well, I like challenge and I love helping people and I love, that part of the thing. And when it gets to volunteerism, that's what to kind of get. But studies demonstrate time after time that the greatest source of long-term happiness and satisfaction is generated by having a sense of purpose in life. And that can take different forms. And I believe that somehow we need to reintroduce the fact that working is good, volunteering is good, challenging yourself is good, and that the source of a lot of people's maybe perceived unhappiness in life could be for some. And to your point, you don't lock everybody in together. Everybody is different. But finding, challenging oneself to reach whatever potential that is, and leaning in to be part of a community and a part of a society is something that is not counterproductive. But by telling ourselves and allowing that to be, when you go into a healthcare facility and the nurses are wearing Beyond Broken lanyards, I don't know what kind of message that sends to each other or to the patients that see it, but somehow that's acceptable to have that as a public-facing message. If someone walked into my business or into school, for example, into a school, and that's the message that they received, well, I don't think that would work out very well for my business or for the kids that went to school. Another narrative that people can't afford to eat healthy, and, we already talked about skip the dishes and that type of thing, but there is an opportunity for people to make different choices to eat healthy.
Yeah, personal choice, I'm going to leave up to individuals, to be honest with you, because I don't know what I can say or you can say to that. People know the difference. They know what's better for them, but sometimes people choose the easy route versus the best route. And I think that's a human nature thing, which has long been in play. I'm not so sure that's a new feature of society. Now, things have changed dramatically, even in my lifetime, but the concept of personal choice has long been the bane of many people's so-called successes or failures. Tom, very quickly, last word, because I have to go.
Well, touching on personal choice, growing up, my grandparents, the authority figures in my community dictated a lot as to what my choices were. What's acceptable, what's expected of me. And I believe if you let Lord of the Flies exist, when there's just a whole bunch of children on an island doing whatever the heck they want to do, and then saying let them all make their own choices, well, as it continues to decline, I think that we need to not be afraid to say, well, perhaps we need to expect more of ourselves and more of others and to make different choices, because we ultimately have to pay for it when people come and say, I'm broken. Anyway, I'll leave that with you. Everybody have a great day and enjoy Volunteer Week.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's take a break. When we come back, Doug Poss is in the queue. He's the Executive Director at End Homelessness St. John's. They're the entity that will be taking care of and operating the Comfort Inn, the transition house that we hope it will be. Doug, right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Executive Director at End Homelessness St. John's. That's Doug Pawson. Good morning, Doug. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm good, thanks.
Doug, in basic terms, how did it come to pass that your organization was going to operate the Comfort Inn? I don't know what we're going to call it in the future, because that feels like an improper reference. But how did that happen? Because we were always led to believe that this would be operated generally by the Department of Health and Community Services, maybe with some input from Justice, maybe with some input from Education or what have you. So how did this unfold this way?
Yeah, great question, Patty. We were supporting Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation, NL Health Services, do consultations with community partners on to how this could be staffed and supported in a way that would really drive better outcomes for folks. We were asked to take it on, and we had some confidence that we had done the proper plan. And we were able to take it on. And so we did our due diligence and agreed to operate this. It's not too dissimilar from what we did through COVID. In fact, we supported 2 wings within the former Comfort Hotel for 2 years during COVID. So we had some experience with that particular resource as well.
Okay, so paint us a picture, because people know what it's like to walk into that hotel if they've ever been there. So it went from 140 rooms, a potential for 140 residents or guests or clients or whatever the right word is, to now we're talking about 100 people. So can you help us understand the difference between the initial 140 and the current 100?
Yeah, so there's 140 total rooms, but in order to staff it through a 24/7 model, you need to draw some of those rooms out of circulation so that staff can operate within and support those sections of the hotel. It's the configuration of the hotel is not like what you would typically see in a downtown hotel where it's a straight up vertical, 7 or 8 floors, but it's dispersed quite uniquely. So you have to have the right staffing complement for each floor in each section. And so that's one reason. Also, there are rooms that have been taken out of circulation so that they could become health clinic spaces. So and supporting folks with primary health needs. So there's rooms that will be used for those purposes in addition to the sort of 100 target that we've talked about.
Okay, and staff is an important word inside this. So there's already staff on site, existing hotel staff, kitchen, housekeeping, some maintenance people and the like. How many other staff will there be? How many are there currently?
Yeah, so for our staffing model, and these would be the folks that we would be employing and we're working with directly on site to support the residents there, we're looking at over 100, and I should couch that to say over 100, including part-time and relief staff as well as full-time staff. So to do this properly in a 24/7 model, those were the numbers that we would need to staff it appropriately.
And who would be making up that 100 of staff? So give us an idea about mental health supports, addiction supports, primary health care, those types of things.
Yeah, great question. So the staffing model that I'm describing is more sort of the social and community and housing support side, but absolutely there's space in there for NL Health Services to have primary health care practitioners. So nurses, community nurses, registered psych nurses will be part of it, as well as other folks dedicated to mental health, addiction supports, and other supports like OTs, for example, an occupational therapist, so that during the day you can have programming to support folks in their goals and identifying what they might need as they transition to a more permanent house and home afterwards.
Yeah, you mentioned psychiatric nurses. We're going to need to change the legislation to actually bring them in. And we were talking about one time being a pilot. Now the minister says it will be a permanent feature of the workforce. Let's hope that happens sooner than later. I mean, I'm not sure how to ask. Well, I'll leave that for a second. What does it look like to identify who could be best served by this type of transition home? Because there's going to be limited spaces if we're talking about 100 rooms. So people talked about the vetting criteria or the eligibility criteria. Can you help us understand how that's going to work?
Yeah, so we're leveraging an existing sort of process that's already in place in our community. It's called coordinated access to homes, and essentially it's like a no wrong door approach. So we work with community partners and agencies who are supporting folks. Those folks have already, they already know who would be a suitable fit, who would benefit from that location. We're prioritizing it through a joint intake process as well. So community partners, ourselves, along with NL Health Services and Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation, just to make sure that we can resource it to meet the needs of those folks going in. Our focus is going to be on the existing shelter stayers. So, any given night in St. John's right now, there's over 300 folks who be experiencing homelessness, and we're going to prioritize folks who have those prolonged experiences, so 6 months or longer, what we would call chronic homelessness. So we're gonna prioritize folks who would meet that definition, whose health has probably been untreated, underlying health conditions are untreated, and who need additional supports to stabilize in order to move on to their next home.
Of course, if we can get people help, if they want help and are willing to receive help regarding their addictions, for instance, and if we can get people's mental health concerns addressed and treated, that will be a part of the so-called transition back into, what people refer to standing on your own 2 feet, getting back into the workforce, what have you. Will there be any additional types of programs in place? Comes to mind, for instance, like the Discovery Centre does, people's ability to finish their high school. Will there be the inclusion of the employment stability program? Because if we're going to have this to be an actual transition house, it's going to need more than the aforementioned wraparound services to really give people a fighting chance.
Oh, absolutely, Patty. I mean, you're 100% correct. Life skills and skill development is a central part of this. Peer support is also going to be an important part into the programming, as well as cultural supports. that are relevant. I mean, we want this to be a space for folks to, because number one, they want to be there. They're going to sign a lease to live there. So this is not a shelter. This is not a shelter overflow. This is housing in that truest sense. But we want people to feel supported and help identify what those needs are and bring those in. Community partners deliver them, those services, and even tenant-led programming we've talked about. So as it gets up and running and operational, those are the things that we will be prioritizing in terms of programming.
Like everything else, when it's be government policy or government spends or what have you, we need to understand a way where we can evaluate whether or not it's been good money spent, or we need to go back to the drawing board for thresholds to measure successes. How are we going to know whether or not this play is successful?
Yeah, another great question. There's a couple of sets of frameworks to look at. I mean, on the housing side, number one, are we able to get people supported and into, their next home safely and securely, and to retain that with the supports and services necessary to be successful? And I would say even more than that. So if they know where to go, in the future to access part of the system of care that we call it, so that they can, prevent, recurrences of homelessness. Those are bigger pieces of the transformation that we want to see as well. So there's that. There's the health indicators. Are we seeing reductions in folks being discharged into homelessness from emergency rooms or hospital settings, for example? So these are really important indicators that we're going to be looking at and evaluating as we progress.
A couple of quick ones before I do have to get to the news. So what does security look like on site? Are people going to be able, even if they're not residents of the facility, going to be able to come and go? What does security look like and access?
Yeah, so security is an important piece of this, and in terms of just making sure that the premises are secure and folks have that feeling of safety and security. And we're going to work with them along with the staff to provide trauma-informed training and supports, mental health, first aid supports as well, so that they understand how to support folks. But yeah, these are people's homes, so there will be movement and flow through. People will come and go, and throughout the day, maybe go downtown or go to appointments. So yeah, it's very much a residence in that sense.
Because a lot of the community supports have been focused in the downtown core as opposed to in the Airport Heights area. So security on site is one thing for people who are living there and working there. What about for the community? Because you know as well as I do, residents in the Airport Heights, I'm not going to generalize and say they're all opposed, but some absolutely are. So speak to the residents of Airport Heights and surrounding area about how end homelessness in relationship with whether it be private security and or the RNC are going to acknowledge that there is the possibility that things might change in their neighborhood. So I'm not going to ask you to offer them cold comfort, but explain to people in the area about how that's going to work, because that's also part of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people have concerns when changes arise, and that's absolutely fair. I think what I would say is our plan is to ensure a robust staffing model so folks have the supports on site that they need. Our plan is to create consultation and engagement sessions with the neighborhood in Airport Heights, and that's ongoing right now. We want to make sure everybody, residents of the neighborhood, but also residents of the hotel, feel safe, the staff are safe, and everybody understands that, the best way to ensure healthy, strong communities is housing. And this is a great example of how we can help folks gain housing, access to housing, to help stabilize themselves and move on into more permanent and supportive housing into the future. So it's really, if we want to build healthy, strong communities, housing is the way to do it, and this is very much aligned with that.
I appreciate the time this morning, Doug, and hopefully we can have, fairly regular check-ins to see how things are proceeding, because for the people who will eventually live there and work there, and for a community at large, we're really going to have to understand if it's working, how it's working, and the ultimate benefit to us all, because this is going to be a huge change to how we approach issues regarding those who are either homeless or precariously close to being homeless and or have required for additional supports in the community, because this is a new feature, a new approach. We all need to know how it's working, and appreciate your updates when you have them to offer.
Yeah, no, anytime, Patty. We want to make sure that folks are informed, and we're as transparent, as honest as we can about the success of the initiative.
I appreciate the time. Stay in touch, Doug.
Thanks again, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Doug Pawson, Executive Director at End Homelessness St. John's. Before we get to the newscast, Ed's there to talk about the Argentia Access Road. Green Energy's in the queue. We're going to talk about trout again. Chris wants to talk about the grid, and I assume that probably means the integration between some of these wind proposals and our grid. Tax time, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 5. Leo, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How are you today?
Doing okay. How about you?
Paddy, I'm calling about a couple of little things about taxes. You heard about this thing that if you don't file your taxes now before the 15th of April, you'll not get the extra carbon tax on your check.
Well, the issue there is if you didn't file your taxes by the 15th of March, you wouldn't get your rebate on the 15th of April. The federal government says that upon the date that you do file your taxes, it'll be about 6 to 8 weeks before you get that rebate. You're not going to miss it. You will get it, but it will be delayed.
No. I understand that there, but why didn't you tell us that on February 15th?
I spoke to it as soon as I found out. So the federal government probably, like many things, should give us a better heads up so that people could be prepared. Fair enough.
Yeah, well, giving us the heads up on the 15th would have been better than giving us a heads up on March or April the 14th.
Yeah, no, I think I first heard about it around the 2nd of March, and the first time I read it, I spoke to it that day. And I tried to mention it many times after because, look, I'm in the same boat. I didn't get mine done on time, so I didn't get the rebate yet.
Well, I got mine done on time. My deceased wife, I never got hers done on time, but it doesn't make no difference because she was getting a refund, so it's not like it's going to hurt her.
Okay.
And she wouldn't have got the carbon tax anyway.
Right.
But the thing is, now is my main group. I called one of the main tax shelters to get her taxes done. It was her last tax return, and it's a special return, but it was a straightforward return. I had it done at the same place last year, and it was $91 to get it done. And I thought that, rather expensive just for a straight OIC and CPP, or whatever. Is it OIC, OAC? Old Age Security, OHS.
So, when you say tax shelter, do you mean just like one of the big tax preparation companies, like H.R. Blocks of the world?
Yeah, the biggest one, H&R Block it is.
Okay.
So anyway, I tried calling. There's the tax numbers that are in the telephone book, and the two for H&R. There was only two there for H&R Block, one for Water Street and one for Big Goods Plaza. So I said, well, Water Street would be the best one to call. I called that, and it said the number you called is no longer in service. Tried it again. Same thing. So, okay, they're no longer in service. They changed their number somehow. So I called Big Good Plaza, and I got a voicemail saying our hours of business are from 9 to 9, Monday through Saturday. Yada, yada, yada. Thank you very much for calling. Click. So there's no way to talk to make an appointment. So I went over to Hamlin Road, and it says on the door, walk-ins available and drop-offs available. I said, fine. I drop it off and come back and get it next week or whenever it's ready to be signed. And when I went in, Mrs. said, well, that sign's an old sign. She said, we don't take walk-ins or drop-offs anymore. She said, because of the volume of people. So I said, okay, that's fine. I said, I guess I'll have to make an appointment. She said, well, you should have called and made an appointment. I said, well, how was I going to do that? She said, by picking up your phone with a bit of an attitude, by picking up your phone, dialing the number and calling and making an appointment. I said, I tried that. I said, your number's out of service on Water Street, and your Big Goods phone number, I said, is a recording just saying your hours of business. And that's the only way to contact you. So there's no way to make an appointment. And with a little bit of an attitude, she says, oh, sorry. So she made an appointment with me for a week away. And when I got there, I thought about it. I said, I must ask how much before she goes through with this is to get done. And I said, could you tell me how much it is to get a straightforward income tax return done? I said, it's only the OAS and the CPP. She said, that'll be $200. And as soon as she said $200, I said, no, forget it. cancel the appointment. Cancel this appointment because I was back for the appointment by this time. This was the week later. So I said, I'll go to the nearest one to me, which is the tax shelter down in Mount Pearl. So I went down there, and before I did anything, I asked how much it would cost, and she said, straightforward, okay, your wife's deceased. She said, it'll be $50 plus tax. And I said, $50 plus tax. Now, you know my wife is deceased. Straightforward tax, OAC, CPP. Yes. Yep, $50. In under 10 minutes, my tax return was done. $57.50. She charged the HST out, of course. So the price up at H&R Block would have been $200 and something plus tax. And I should have waited for her to finish the end because it could have been $250 plus tax, $220 plus tax. So why the big jump for a 10-minute tax return to be done?
I don't know. And I mean, that only jeopardizes their own customer base or potential customers if people do shop around, which people should do regardless of what we're talking about, tax preparation or otherwise. I will add this for folks who are wondering if they can get some support filing their taxes. There's, for instance, at the Marine Institute in the library tonight between, I think it's 4 and 6, people can drop by to get some help with their taxes. So that might be helpful to some folks listening to the program this morning. And I'll let you wrap up your thoughts, Leo, before I have to go.
Okay, but now if I could have got a hold of H&R Block by telephone, I would have asked the amount. But they got it set up so that you can't get a hold of them. So you just go in because there's a lot of people that want, like I didn't want cash back. But there's a lot of people that go in there strictly to get cash back, but other companies supply cash back also. Right?
They
so
do.
like
They'll have a
they got
base
their
fee
number
and
that
take
you-
a percentage of your return.
Yeah. But to have no number to contact them to find any of this information out, you have to go in there. And people don't think to ask them how much it costs because they think, okay, everybody's around the same as your gas station. You're going to pay $1.90 gas.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
and
sure.
And the one other thing about gas and taxes is I fill my car up 16 times a year. Now, I go back and forth to the hospital quite frequently, to the drugstore, and to doctor's appointments. So I'm burning $100 worth of gas every 3 weeks, so that's $1,600 a year. My income, this carbon tax rebate, my last check was for $146, I believe. That 3 times a year adds up to be $600.
Yeah, the payments are quarterly.
So I'm paying $1,000 more for my and I don't want to be driving around as much as I do, but I got no choice but to go to these appointments. I have stage 4 cancer in 4 different places, so I can't miss my appointments. I had to get there. I had to go get prescriptions.
So just 1 second, Leo. You said your total gas cost for a year is around $1,000. Is that what you said?
$1,600.
$1,600
every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks, I have to fill my car with gas, and it takes $95 to $100 when she's down and empty.
Right. So inside that $1,600, the carbon tax rebate is not intended to offset the entire purchase price of fuel throughout the course of the year. So you'll get a quarterly check, which adds up to almost $600, $596, which absolutely does cover the amount of carbon tax you're spending on gasoline. Not to say that it doesn't have an impact on other parts of the economy, but yeah.
Yes, that's true. There's the other rest of the taxes in there too. But when they say some people are going to do much better, but I'm doing all the taxes together, which maybe I should not be doing. Okay. All right. Well, that's my say on just to forewarn. It's a bit late in tax season now for all those poor buggers that went in and paid an extra $150, $200. It's at least $180 anyway.
It's a buyer beware. Shop around for everything, your insurance and otherwise.
Yeah, beware next year.
Thank you, Leo.
Because and what would drive their? Did COVID cause their taxes? Was it that much to deliver computer ink?
No.
Because they do it all by computer.
Yep.
Oh my goodness gracious! I should go into the delivery of the computer ink business.
Yeah.
Okay, Patty, you have a.
Okay, thanks, Leo. Take care.
You have a good day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, for those of you in the queue, stay right there. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. So apparently in the world of tax preparation, and yes, there's places where you can get help. I know some options out there. So if you're looking for some help, we can get you some help. And you only have 2 weeks to file your taxes if you're going to get them done on time and avoid the penalties and interest. But apparently some of the big tax preparation companies, it's no longer cash in hand and or a check in the mail. It's a prepaid MasterCard to reflect the refund. Strange stuff. I guess they have a lucrative arrangement with the company. Let's go to line number 1. Ed, you're on the air. Good morning, Ed. Line number 1.
Sorry, Paddy.
Yes, sir.
Ed Moore.
Welcome to the show, Ed.
Yeah, it's been a good many years since I've been on your show now, but I thank you for listening, for taking my call this morning.
My pleasure.
But I want to, I've heard it talked about before on your show recently, about the potholes and rough roads and so on. Well, I just want to give you this one example. I went over the Argentia Access Road. I think the number is 60 or 100. But over the Argentia Access Road last week, and I damaged a tire. Now, this is a new car with less than 800 kilometers. So, you're taking pretty close attention to a new car. And I hit the pothole after zigzagging around others. And, by the time I got home, I was on the rim. And I called the next morning. I called the chain of government, tried to go through the chain of government to find out if there's insurance for damage done through potholes. Now, I started with, I tried Christian Morris, was the name that was given me first. Now, I started calling him around 9 o'clock in the morning, and I left a number of messages for him. He's in town here. He's the superintendent of the highways. And anyway, I never did get a return call from him. And when I finally did get the girl again, the receptionist, she said, no, he leaves at 3. Starts at 9, works at 3. Okay, I wish I had the job. But anyway, going through that chain, I tried Sherry Gammon, and she couldn't assist me. Sherry said to me, she said, Ed, yes, there's an insurance pot there for that. But she said, I'm here 15 years, and she said, we have never paid a cent from that insurance pot for damage that they never get, and it's not because people don't go looking for it, is they don't know where to go look, like myself, and they just don't pay it, not 5 cents. So then the next person I get through to is Christian Morris's assistant, Sonia Power. Hello?
I'm just listening. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Sonia Power told me that she's been with the government for 7 years, and they've never paid out a cent of damages that's caused by roads and potholes. So here you have an insurance policy. They're available from the government, but not paying out any money. And she said to me very quickly, she said, don't you have insurance on your tires? And I not to be abrasive or brash, but I said, well, that's really not your concern what insurance I have. I'm asking the government to help me in this situation where I damaged my, because it wasn't my fault. It wasn't the fault of Honda. I said, you are the ones, in my mind, have dropped the ball on this issue, because the potholes there are numerous and cratered, like potholes. So getting to her, she finally said to me, she said, okay, what I'll do is I will email you with a result.
Which was?
Now, I've never a result of whether or not they were going to help me out financially.
And the decision was?
I don't know. I didn't get an email. She was going to email me with a decision, but I never received that email. Now, all I can gather from this is that they have an insurance policy, insurance pot of money. They have it there. People go looking for it, but they're turned down, because I can't believe for a moment that people ask for help or don't ask for help after destroying a rim or a tire. And here the government is is it to make themselves look good? Are they saving money on the backs of people when they could assist them in some monetary way? So again, I'd like to know what their decision is.
Yeah,
in my case, specifically.
Well, I'd like to know when you get the decision. The same fight people have with municipalities. Like here in the city, the rules are it's a floating target. So the concept is, if the city is made aware of a certain pothole, they have a certain amount of time to address it, to fix it, before they become liable for any damages suffered. All that being said, people have had limited success with trying to get any coverage for tires or rims or suspension because of hitting one of these. Not only the number of potholes, but the severity of some of the potholes. So it's an uphill fight, to be sure. Whether or not people ever have any satisfaction, I'm willing to hear from them if they have, but I know I took it on one time. Absolutely zero chance. And it was a pothole, and I went right by their rules. It was something that not only had been reported much prior to how their rules kick in, but I even reported it, and I got no support. So when you get your final determination and your answer, be happy to have you on. Let me know what happened.
Yes, indeed I will. Paddy, just to that, I meant to, in the first go of this chain of government, I went to the mayor of the town and to ask him, is the town responsible for this section of road? And he said, no, it's the Department of Highways, government. I said, okay, fine. Because I would be addressing the town the same way I'm addressing government. I'm going through the channels, but after blatantly coming out and saying to me, I've been here this line, never gave 5 cents. Been here that line, never gave 5 cents. You got an insurance pot. So is it something powerful to be able to say that, sorry about that.
That's okay. Ed, when you get enough... I'll give you the last word very quickly because I have to go.
Yeah, okay. Last word. They're saving the money on the people so that at the end of the day, budget time comes. Well, we never spent any money on this item in the budget where they could have helped people. Yes, I had insurance on my tires, but I was still out of pocket.
Understood. And of course, when they start paying out and that becomes the public knowledge and people start talking about it, then of course there'll be an endless run on them. I suppose that's why they play coy with this particular issue. Ed, I have to get to the news, but I'm glad you called again after all these years. Stay in touch.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye. Bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Chris, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How are you today?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, good. I sent an email off to Hydro last week asking about World Energy and how they would interact with the grid. And I did get a very informative email back, and I was hoping I could share that with the folks.
Go ahead.
And this is from Jill Pitcher, who's a senior communications officer. Hydro's been really helpful, as has the PUB, for kind of learning about this type of stuff. Unlike some other government departments, they're very proactive in their publishing. There's a lot of stuff to read if you're willing to put the time into it. Either way, so thank you to the staff there. So this is what Jill had to say about it. We consider all potential sources of supply to meet demand for electricity. Source selection is based on delivering electricity at the lowest possible cost in an environmental responsible manner consistent with reliable service. As this new source becomes available, it will be considered as part of the reliability and resource adequacy proceeding. Skipping a little bit there. I can't provide the email if you want, though.
Sure, send it along.
Yeah, will do. We're ready to continue discussing and working with proponents, including World Energy GH2, and through our public utility regulatory process to find the right solution to serve new industrial customers. While the project has passed environmental assessment, there's still much work to be done to determine how these assets could integrate into our provincial grid. That will be considered as part of the system impact study, which is a key next step in the process. Consistent with our mandate, delivering electricity at the lowest cost in an environmentally responsible manner, consistent with reliable service, Hydro purchases energy for no more than our marginal cost, which is outlined in our recent non-firm rate application and is linked to export market value. The same pricing approach would apply to World Energy GH2 should they be integrated into the grid. Our rate to sell energy to World Energy GH2 will be based off PUB-approved rates for island industrial customers.
The concern there, though, is because we have a three-phased approach being taken by World Energy GH2, that probably means we're going to have a staggered interaction and dollars and cents issue with World Energy and our grid, because their ultimate business model with 364 wind turbines is vastly different than phase one as a standalone. So that price is going to change inevitably over time, whether it be how much we pay them for power or how much they pay us.
Well, so where rates are based off of Hydro's marginal cost, I would think there'd be a little bit less variability in terms of how much we're selling them energy for. The Kruger deal may be informative to how much we might be looking at per gigawatt hour, at least for this period of time. Now, I imagine these rates are renegotiated every year at least. But this is the type of matter where the Public Utilities Board could probably help educate the public on such a complicated manner.
Yeah, you would. Well, it will inevitably be approved at the end of the day at the PUB is my general understanding of how this works. But there's still a lot left to understand here. There's no idea about timelines for construction out there. There's no definition of green at the federal level to talk about the variance between 15% of a tax break or a subsidy versus 40%. So there's a lot left to be determined here. I mean, it's not the end of the day. The province has given them their green light, albeit with some 60 conditions, many of which are already addressed in the environmental assessment put forward, or the EIS and the results of put forward by the proponent. So there's still a lot left here to understand. Anything else you'd like to add to it this morning, Chris? And I do hope you pass that or send that email along.
Yeah, I will send the email. I will add another little bit of grid-related information I came across. Sort of the big issue with wind energy is that it is intermittent, so it is not considered a firm source of energy. And so when it comes to things like Holyrood and how or if we replace that, it needs to be with firm power. And so currently that would be hydro on our grid. In other places, that would include things like nuclear or natural gas. The discussion of bringing nuclear to the island or to the province actually started, if only very briefly, back in 2020. When Federal Resource Minister Seamus O'Regan approached the province through Andrew Parsons to be part of the roundtable on SMRs that the federal government has been administering. And in particular, Andrew, in his response to Seamus to participate, said that there is interest in SMRs as a potential to replace diesel generation in microgrids. Now, Andrew then goes on to say that, well, nuclear power is prohibited, so, that, kind of stops there.
Sure. Add the uncertainty of what might come to pass regarding offshore wind and how that might satisfy some of our ongoing needs, which could mean that, for firm power, maybe the recommendation made by the consultants for a 150 megawatt diesel generator located at Holyrood might be the end play, because we don't know about what source of power might be out there. Chris, I've got to take another call here quick, but I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up.
Everyone should learn more about the grid, and thank you very much to the PUB and Hydro for all the data they provided.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for this, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here to go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Executive Director at ASP. That's the Association of Seafood Producers. That's Jeff Loader. Jeff, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad, sir.
Very quickly, before we get into the new deal on crab, did your organisation lobby the government and Minister Davis in particular to go back to the old price-setting formula versus trying to hammer out some sort of new formula this year?
No, we did not. We have had the same position we have had now for a good part of 13, 14 months. There needs to be a constructive dialogue on creating value in this province for harvesters, plant workers, and processors. That's been our position. We did not at any point lobby for a particular outcome. The province made it clear that we were going to have a formula in 2024. So the Minister Davis implemented particular regulations to make that happen. And it was not a surprise to me. It was not a surprise to the union. We were informed 30, 45 days before that there would be a panel related to a formula.
Okay. Is there something specific or something new you'd like to share here this morning? Well, we have, because I have a couple of questions.
Yes, I'd like to just make sure that your audience understands that we now have 3 formulas: halibut, lobster, and crab. While we were spending literally 24 hours a day over the last month or so negotiating crab, we negotiated a very positive deal on lobster. The OCM ran an article today on that. It was a very positive development. We've dealt with the Mother's Day issue. We also, last year, myself and Jason Spingle worked out a compromise on halibut. So we now have, if you look at the numbers, 3 formulas for 3 of the most important species in this province.
And the lobster price was set. The announcement comes out, so $3.25 a pound. It will increase by 70% of any incremental amount greater than $5 and 80% of any incremental amount greater than $6. There's a couple of things that I want to get to regarding how the market works and when people are buying or not buying. Let's start with lobster. So we know that Rick Crane out in Cox's Cove built his own lobster holding tank, which I think can hold some 48,000 pounds of lobster. And his concern was the buyers aren't always buying. And plus, when they do buy, if they have some inkling that the market may improve, they can either sit on cold storage with crab or sit on cold storage or in a tank with lobster. And consequently, what the harvester gets isn't reflective of what the processor may eventually get down the road. So people think that's a market manipulation. I'll get you to speak to that because I have a bunch of people coming at me with these exact concerns. So what do you make of those assertions?
So there's a history lesson that needs to be explained to everyone in this province right now. The lobster formula was set without representation from ASP at the time. It was a deal that was put in place. It's a reasonable formula, Paddy, but it needed tweaks. Selling lobster from this province, so if you catch lobster and on a Wednesday and you sell it to a processor or a buyer within, say, 48 hours, it's not sold till 7 to 10 days later. It does not go right from the wharf into the market in Boston. Last year, in the first week of the lobster season, buyers and processors lost tens of millions of dollars. In particular, in some of the most rural areas of this province, buyers lost an incredible amount of money that first week, because what happens is there's no lobster on the market. Mother's Day is approaching. It is the most significant buying time of the year. And lobster leaves Newfoundland 5-7 days after it was caught, or within, say, 48 hours, depending on the area. It gets to the market, and processors were paying on the the previous week's selling price based on an Urner-Berry price. The union, and I would like to give the FFAW, Mr. Pretty, and their chief negotiator some credit. We negotiated a new lobster deal within 3 hours because we presented the numbers in a very frank and rational way, and it's very clear that at the start of the season, processors and buyers in Newfoundland and Labrador lose an incredible amount of money because of the market dynamics. The union agreed to change that in the formula this year. The percentages that you mentioned earlier are not new. They have been there forever.
Right. So
what we did this year, Paddy, was we corrected a problem with a formula. And that's the type of conversation that ASP and the FFAW need to continue to have on a yearly basis. And I am very proud of the fact that we have formulas now for halibut, lobster, and crab. And every year, and if you look at the crab formula right now, we agreed to a $3 price throughout the entire year, and there will be a reconciliation based on invoices, FOB Plant Boston, 5/8 sections, Newfoundland. That is an incredible achievement. And we will need every year to talk about how we tweak each of these formulas. But that's a much better conversation to have than fighting over what we think the price is going to be from a minimum price perspective, which is what has happened now for the last 15, 20 years. And then everybody go back to the panel and have people try to make a decision on where a market is going. Nobody, if you can predict where the market is going, you wouldn't be sitting on a price-setting panel, and you wouldn't be working for ASP, and you wouldn't be working for the union. That's the reality that we're dealing with. So formulas, they make sense. We accomplished something very significant over the last week, and we've all been working around the clock. And I do want to acknowledge, and I really, and I mean this sincerely, the FFAW and Mr. Pretty, Abe, their new chief negotiator, Abe Solberg, put a lot of time in coming up with a hybrid solution to what is a very difficult public policy and economic problem. If you have to sit down and try to predict where a market is to and settle a price for the next 4 months or 8 months, nobody can do that. So we have a formula, it shares value, and it's very fair.
So very quickly, because I do have to go, is if the $3 is the agreed upon price now, what changed between a couple of weeks when you put forward $2.60? Because if there was always going to be some sort of inclusion of an opportunity for reconsideration, vendor season evaluation, the so-called holdback and bonuses that can be paid. So what happened between $2.60 and $3 over the course of 2 weeks?
Paddy, we did not put forward $2.60. We put a submission into the panel for a formula that had a floor of $2.60.
That might be what you put forward, but the panel's process changed all the way back to last year's. So they could only go with the number you used, which was $2.60, and the union had $2.83. So what changed between $2.60 and $3 over the course of 2 weeks?
So last week, I communicated to the union and to the people of this province that we were prepared, because there is an issue. With our submission and the union submission, there's an issue related to the proxy. The Urner-Berry numbers do not change until there's new crab in the market. So it's right now $5.45, but that's not the market. And I communicated that to the union weeks ago, that we were prepared to set a price based on our anticipation of what the market would be. Because until new crab goes into the market, we don't know what the formula will spit out for the new season. So what changed was the fact that the market has changed, number one. Number two, ASP, we have to consider the impact on our employees and plant workers in this province. And the reason I signed that agreement on Sunday was because plant workers have a right to go to work. And Paddy, there's one more issue I would like to talk about if I could.
I have very limited time, but let's see.
So over the last month, I have received violent threats towards myself, my family. Processors have received those threats. And I have no doubt that the union leadership received the same threats. It's 2024. And if anyone in this province thinks that Jeff Loader or ASP or anyone else will be bullied into something because of threats of violence, and I'm going to say it this way to you, Paddy. I've been waking up every morning now for the last several weeks, and the first call I had to make is to the RNC to review the threats that have been made to me and my family and to processors. It's unacceptable. We are better than that. Newfoundland and Labrador, we have a heritage. We are united by our history, and we should not be acting like that. And it will not intimidate me, any of my members, or anyone else in this province. But it's completely unacceptable. And I would ask everyone listening to this call right now, when you have to wake up in the morning, and the first thing you have to do is check in with a public authority regarding your own safety, because there's death threats and other violent threats to you, you would not tolerate it for your children, and nobody should be subject to that, whether it's Greg Priddy, anyone in the union, myself, you, Paddy, or anybody who works for government, any bureaucrat or any citizen of this province.
Or even inside the rank of the harvesters, because I see some of that as well. Jeff, I do appreciate the time and the sentiment there. Violence is never the answer. We're talking about a price per pound of crab. I mean, come on. And I know it's people's livelihoods, but threats of violence are unacceptable. I'm on the receiving end sometimes, and it's just ridiculous. Jeff, I appreciate your time. Stay in touch.
Thanks, Paddy.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Jeff Loader, Executive Director at ASP. Break time. Welcome back to the program. Well, the callers that were in the queue, we appreciate your patience and thank you for rejoining us tomorrow, because we didn't want to give you short shrift because we were quickly running up against 12 o'clock with some of the conversations that went a little longer than they maybe should have. Anyway, there you go. Big thanks. Chris Bruce sent along some of the portions of the email he got from Newfoundland Labrador Hydro talking about forecasted demand and what the solutions may be. We are thinking that there's going to be some amendments concluded regarding the Atlantic Accord and the possibility for offshore wind to be part of the energy portfolio. Whether or not that means that we would be part of their eventual market in the form of a power purchase agreement remains to be seen, but there you go. All right, many folks across the country, even though there's been a barrage of pre-budget announcements, some $38 billion in new announcements. Some of that is $17 billion worth of loans. So $21 billion hit to the government's bottom line has already been announced. The thoughts that there might be an increase in tax on the so-called uber wealthy in the country might be coming. Also, the considerations of what a windfall tax might look like for major corporations. I did hear from a friend in Ottawa today during the show this morning to say that maybe, just maybe, that might not be a feature given some of the pushback by some of these large corporations and industries like the oil business, who absolutely have seen massive increase in production and revenue and profit this past calendar year. So we'll see what comes. All right, so the budget will be delivered sometime around 5:30 Island time, I'm led to believe. So we'll be following and talk about it again on the program tomorrow. Well, we will indeed pick up this conversation right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer David Williams, I'm your host Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.